Hello, I'm talking about an anti-pattern called spaghetti code. It's pretty actually interesting. People use this term left and right, and don't think about the consequences of what does it actually mean. So let me first explain you what is a spaghetti code. So you can clearly Google it and go to Wikipedia and check it out there. But generally, spaghetti code is a very old anti-pattern that happened back in before the object-oriented programming, when we were coding in Go-to statements. The idea is that spaghetti code is a code that calls so many different layers and different modules. It could actually stay in the same module, but the idea is that the layers and the classes are interconnected so tightly that changing one thing is a very expensive operation. So it's like a spaghetti, So the fries of the spaghetti and macaron pasta thing, it's actually calling from one place to another, and then that place goes another place, and so on and so on. I'm going to show you a diagram later on. What does it mean? But in general, it's pretty much interconnected system that suffers due to too many connections, and these are not well thought. There are no module boundaries. So let me show you an example of that. So there are users, and the users have posts, right? And each post can have a comment. So here we have a user 1, and here we have user 2, and then they comment on each other's posts. And then on this card, which represents a single post, for now, a user can, I have only one post tabbed out in the data. So you can click and see all the articles of that user. So here we go. And then you can see all the articles of this user. And here we go. It's pretty much lorem ipsum for the time being. So that's not important. So obviously I didn't do any routing and everything. I just wanted to keep it super simple. So you see, even a simple application like this, whenever you have interconnections between the modules, you will start experiencing, you might start suffering from spaghetti code. So let me show you how it could be implemented in a bad way, and then what you can do to actually make it better. So let's have a look. It could be implemented in the code. So let's say I have a three libraries: comments, posts, and the users. And then let's start with posts, because this is the most important. This is like a core of all blogging. And then you can see we have two components: one for the posts, one for the user posts, and then the service, right? And then when we look at the comments, pretty much that's only the service. And then when we look at the users, it's only the service as well. So technically we have three services, three different models, and then they know about each other. So let me show you a couple of things that it could be done badly. So first of all, comment service. So I just tap the data. I don't make the real call for the backend, but it's pretty much the same. So you need to return the observable of a comment. So maybe let's not focus so much on this part. Let's focus on actually model. So you see, a comment will have a user, because I need to show the avatar of that user, right? So I need to have it here. That's the first mistake we can be making. Then the second one, a user might have post, which is the optional parameter. So whenever you see your interfaces start getting optional parameters, that's usually a light bulb should light up. Like, hey, that's a red flag, Like, why do I have optional parameters? Ideally, you wouldn't have them at all. And then when we look at the posts, here we go. It doesn't know technically about anything, but there is this hidden linking part, which is a writer email. This is how we get actually a users assigned to that post. And then when we look at the post HTML, sure, we have I have some logic related to changing the state here, but in general you have a mat card and then all the comments. And look at this. Sometimes people do it. They make a function inside a template, because that's how they bypass the whole observable problems, and that calls a service from the outside, but this time by post ID. So I know it's a little bit blurry, so let me show you how it would look like in the diagram. So a diagram would have a component layer and then you have a services layer. So these are two different layers because you can inject them in a constructor that already tells you a lot about it. So far so good. I mean, this is like a modeling one-on-one, no problem at all. And then I also indicated that problem I showed you, that from the template you actually call that service. It's not entirely true. You don't call it from the template because the template calls a component function. But I just want to indicate that this is sort of another layer, right? Because it's inside my HTML. So we're skipping sort of a layer here as well. So this is how it looks like. Sure, we have a post, we have comments, we have users. Each one of them have actually a model inside. I'm going to show it just in a second. And then you have a user post and post component. So post is the list of all posts, and user post is the list of user posts, the one after the read more button. So check it out, how it's connected. So post service knows about, post component knows about the post service, of course. It also knows about the user service because it needs to fetch that data. I can show you that in a moment, but very often inside the component we would be joining two services just to get the data we want. And then we also have a user post component that knows about the user service. And then on top of that, comment service needs to know about the user service, which even, this is a bad practice because they are on the same layer and they know about each other. That's a bad thing. It shows a sign of you missing an abstraction here. And then the user service knows about the post service. Then when we go one step ahead, let's see how the models know about each other. Well, a comment knows about the user, it's part of it. There is no comment without the user. A post knows about the user because I need to show that avatar icon. And then the user knows about the post because the user might have post, the optional parameter. And then also HTML template calls the comment service. So things are getting really, really interconnected right now. And this is spaghetti code. Check it out. I mean, things are on the same layer, address each other. And this is like a super basic solution. Normally you could have like many layers of abstraction. So this is only 2 layers of abstraction and 3 services and 2 components, and we already have a spaghetti code. Look how it actually moves between each other. This resembles a spaghetti. Actually, in object-oriented they call it also lasagna, but that's pretty much what's happening to visualize it. And now I'm going to tell you why is that a problem. So let's take a couple of scenarios. So let's say my user service has an avatar, right? And that service is connected in so many places. Posts, maybe directly doesn't necessarily do it, but through one of the components, like here, you see, I'm having a logic to concat that data and append it as a user to my post, right? So even though it doesn't obviously say it, it technically is a problem. So technically a post should have a user as well. But yeah, it depends on your implementation and the interfaces, but there is a linking of post and the user. And then also the same is in the comment. So a comment has a user. So imagine a situation like this. I have a team that works on the user service, right, on the user part, and they decide, hey, this is silly. Let's not have a avatar. Let's just like this. Let's not have an absolute URL because we always use the same sort of a domain. So let's just do like this. Let's just store only the final file, and then this part we can put it in the template or whatever. Sure. In their own templates that will work, but then they have to remember to go to all other components that now are broken because of that. That's not gonna scale, right? So check it out. If I change that, you see, all my avatars are gone. And even though they could have done it in some sort of a user setting part that actually this team is maintaining, now they have a problem. So that leads to the conclusion that linking models inside each one another and linking them here is a bad practice. You should actually, when you talk about the modeling, you should copy that data and use events and event-driven architecture, but that's a lot more advanced topic. We're going to cover that in future videos. Actually, I'm going to have some conference talks about it, so stay tuned on my channel. I'm going to upload it there. But generally, How do you know about the coupling? Well, you look at the imports on top of the file. So here I have an import from another library. This is a bad thing to do. You create coupling, and you should avoid this at all costs. So yeah, that's one scenario. Other scenarios could be moving that file is also problematic because you have to update your import parts. And I understand IDEs have that functionality of refactoring when you move between the folders, but not always actually that works for me. Sometimes it breaks, but also you just have to check it. Sometimes randomly your build can fail because of that, and it's really problematic. So linking the data is a big problem in spaghetti code. Another thing is you cannot just technically move things around. So for example, let's say I have a post and someone comes in and says, I would like to copy that and move that part of the post without the comments in some, I don't know, a home page or a dashboard page. And you as a naive developer say, well, that's easy, right? The previous developer did it very nicely. I just need to move a smart component or something like that. Well, then until you look in the code and you realize, holy, that's not happening actually. Now if I want to move that component, I have to actually move this part, refactor it. I have to move this part if I want to comment, or if I don't want to comment, I have to omit it and stuff. And then also look at my constructors. They are getting bulky. 3 things in a constructor is acceptable, but this is super simple example, right? But 4, I would already say it's a sort of a yellow flag already. 5, definitely a red flag. You're having too many things in your constructors. And also, this is one thing. And then also, let's say you would like to use a user service, right? So, hey, you have a user service, let's use it in another component. Yeah, easy peasy. Well, not really, because you're dragging a post service together with you. So you have to copy the post service as well. And that's not easy. And then when you start using things like lazy loading, well, good luck about that, because you want to make sure there is only one instance of that post service in the whole application. You can do it by providing in root and stuff, but not always that can be the case. You can maybe decide not to do it and things like this. So I'm telling you, these things are pretty nasty. And another anti-pattern here is that I'm using a state inside my user service. This is a separation of concerns. You should separate your state logic away from your services. The service should be only responsible to fetching the data and providing that for your application. So that being said, there's a lot of mistakes, and trust me, moving things around is not easy as it seems. It's actually pretty difficult. And then your business comes in and say, hey, you said that's like 5 story points. Why does that take you so many days, right? And then you say, yeah, it actually wasn't as what I was expecting. It's because the previous developer didn't leave the good code behind. So pretty much like I have to do all the grunt work just to clean up the stuff. So, speaking of which, how would we clean it up? On the diagram, the first thing you want is to remove the dependencies on the red arrows. So the post and comment and user shouldn't be interconnected. How can you do that? Well, just remove this, make them clean, make them separate as much as possible. Now, when you remove those things, you're still gonna have a connection between also the services, so you also want to remove those. So what you're gonna do is, okay, how do we do now? Because this clearly won't work. So what you need usually is another layer of abstraction. So let me show it to you. And then in here, what we can do is to create a new layer. I can style it just in a second. Let's just make it a nice yellow, which represents an application. And then we're gonna call it post state. Yeah. So when we have a post state, now the post state might know about the rest of the thing. So it will know about that service, because everything is centered around it. It will know about this service, and then it will know about this service. And then that is the logic that will determine, connect all those models. And now when you have that model, you need a new type of model. You're gonna call it user post with comments, let's say. So you know where I'm going, right? So that model, let's change the color of it. Yeah, maybe this. So that model will be only query model. Query model is something that is getting delivered for your components. So this way, you can have a new model, and that model, yeah, sure, it will tangle these three together. But now I know I have only one place I can go in order to modify it. So, the guys who are doing the post state can make that user post model as something shareable, and they will understand that this is something that need to nurture, and now they can enforce rules on the services from another teams, like from the post service is pretty core of this, but from the comment guys and user service, they can say you must always return me that user in a specific format. So they can create something called like a DTO or a contract, really, that will say, your user can change, your user can be whatever you want to do, but between my post state and your user service, there must be a contract that we're going to call user for now. But what it means is it's an avatar in absolute URL, and it's an email of that user. All the rest stuff you can change as much as you want. And then you can enforce things like integration testing that can say, hey, whenever you change the format of this user, or whenever you change, the inner working of it, I'm gonna break your pipeline and say you cannot do it, because that's a contract. Contracts are meant to not be broken. And then we can also remove that part, because the user post will already contain comments, so you don't have to worry about it. And this is when we're gonna have a clean architecture. That's how you should do it. This is one way. Of course, there is so many other ways, because you can also look at it and say, hey, that doesn't look very good, because you see you have these three connections into one, and that's not good enough. Sure, I do agree. An alternative for it, if you really want to be super detailed, I'm going to just show it to you. You can break those changes and remove them, and then treat this as a module. So that module will have its own state as well. So you can put it behind and say, this is a comment state. And then doing this, you can have also user state. Sorry for the sound in the back. Okay. And then you see it's gonna be a parallel to it, so they're not gonna know about each other if you really want to be pro, right? So now the question is, well, how the post state will know about it? Well, it will, because, sorry, let me just make it consistent. All right. It will know, because you need to communicate in between, and in order to communicate, you can use a very nice trick. And all you have to do really is to agree on the contracts, as I mentioned. So let's say, check it out. You need another abstraction layer. Yeah, you guessed that right. I mean, whenever you have an issue with spaghetti, most of the time the solution is to create an abstraction layer. So what you can do is to create a very tiny abstraction layer here called application bus. Let's change that to red. This is a very important factor. And now these modules can post information to you can call it a global state sort of thing. And then each of these can subscribe to it. So whenever you push a data, you can push back and forth but the idea is like this. These modules will not know about each other. They will know about application bus only, and then the application bus will have a dispatcher. You can dispatch things to it, and you can have a subscriber. You can subscribe to it. So a user state service will publish a global core object of the user. It will not be the same as the user used in the user service. It will be like the minimum necessary data to say that a user changed, or you can use events, or you can use just a normal interfaces as well. Events are better, far better, but this is not the scope of this topic. But generally, that user state can publish data to application bus just using absolute URL and the email, and then the post state can subscribe to it, and whenever it will sort of duplicate that data inside the post. Yes, duplicate is the keyword. You wanna do that in distributed environment because you either optimize for consistency or availability. Here we're talking about availability and eventual consistency. I touched a lot of topics. I know I a little bit I flow a little bit way beyond that, but I just want to give you a bit of a tease about what's coming in the future. So in general, application bus will output that core interface representing a user, and then the post state can actually do it. And whenever a comment happens, it will also post it. So the comment state will know about it, but it will also post, hey, comment has been added. And then the post service can subscribe to that event and say, oh, comments has been added. That's important for me. So what I can do is, hey, give me that comment with the post ID, and then find that post ID, find that post by post ID, and inject that comment into it. So technically, these states don't necessarily need to actually contain all the comments, depending on your use case, and the user state doesn't need to contain all the information about the users, but it can post the changes in those models, and then the post state can be this bulk place where you actually consistently combine all the information together. I'm not going to show you how to code it because that's a lot of code and a lot of refactor, and I want to keep that video short, but I hope this explains something to you. If you want something more tangible, let me know, and I will make it as a part of my GitHub repository to show you how it should be actually coded. But without your interest, I'm not gonna do it, so let me know. I hope you learned something today. I know it's quite a lot of information and maybe a little bit fluffy, but I'm pretty sure if you Google things a little bit more and see it for yourself and be a little bit curious, you're going to find a lot of cool resources about it, maybe even some of my conferences. At Cobira, we actually use application bus pretty extensively. It's a big thing. I mean, this is the next level after using NGRX or NGXS or Akita or whatever state management system you want to use. It gives us huge benefits, like big time. We can build a software like BREX, which is the next generation of website builders, very easily without affecting scope of other modules, and it has proven to be scaling pretty nicely. So I'm gonna make more videos about that in the future. For today, I wanted to let you know, if the only thing you're gonna learn today is spaghetti code can be seen by looking at your imports on top of the files. If you have a service or some sort of a class in one layer connecting to another layer, that's a spaghetti code already there. And then if you have interconnected connections in your components with using multiple services, that's also a spaghetti code. Well, it can be a spaghetti code. And then finally, you can do it by extracting some certain logics into another layers, and then also adding a new layer on top of that, which decouples the module between each other. So this is like the most common approach to it, and it's really clean and neat. I hope you learned something. Let me know if you want to hear more about that topic. But for now, that's it. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.